Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November meeting from the Wisconsin Motor Scale. We've got a couple of announcements this evening. We wanted to announce that as of the last board meeting, Mike Robertson offered to step in as our vice president. So, welcome, Mike. Thank you very much for taking the position. We discussed a budget for 2021, so we're starting to get some numbers in as far as employees. It seems we haven't been spending a lot on gift cards since next year we will have to be what we do, so to speak. We're trying to cut back a little bit. Tonight we're going to have two $25 gift cards. It's not going to be the normal 5, but we're going to try to bring at least 2 in per meeting. See if we can keep that up and going, and then also keep all the meetings on Thursday at 6:30, the regular time, so we can get back into some kind of a schedule, trying to bring a little bit of normalcy back into it. Mike Robertson and I are going to be working on a new look for the website. We're going to try to bring it in, currently, maybe a little bit more appealing. So we'll be bringing that to you as soon as we develop something on it. Our ballot.
Hey, Ron?
That's 26
Your question?
It's really hard to hear.
Is this any better?
Yes.
Okay, I just got to hold it up closer.
That's where I'm
Sorry.
at.
Did you hear about the new look for the website? No. Tell us about the new look for the website. If you didn't hear,
Where's your meeting?
Mike Robertson and I are looking at a new look for the website, and we'll bring that to you, as it comes along. The balance in our checkbook as of October 24th
Usually
is
have the one on
$5,509.39. We had a few expenses as far as the speakers that we had, and also the internet. They take out monthly. Other than that, we've got nothing.
Still down to here.
And going on. Richard, do you have a minute? You want to talk about the toys? Or am I going to get you to go with something? I can, if you want, I can do it, but, well, you're up on it. I just want to hold that close. I did.
You can drag that over.
It's just a quick thing that I did. Guys, thank you so much. We've got grasshoppers coming in, we've got dragons, we've got ducks, pocket toys, stuffed animals, dolls, pigs, cars, planes.
Scissors, teeth, indexes, they're not letting them in. They don't see them.
It's a really difficult year for health and
That's somebody that's not.
safe and other issues.
Hey guys, there's a lot of background noise going on.
What do you mean, Kevin?
Everybody needs to mute their thing because I'm not hearing a word you're saying.
Hold on. Admit all right there. There we go.
Jerry, you're talking in the background. We can hear that too.
Oh, there you're picking me up too. Hold on.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to say thanks to all the guys that we've got grasshoppers, those dragons, 25 ducks, pocket toys, stuffed animals, doll beds, tanks, cars and planes. I just want to say thank you to all you guys who are doing this. And, the women's shelters I've been in contact with, they're so grateful for, anything we can give them. It's such a really needed thing. And I know all this time and effort and what you're putting into it really comes out from the bottom of your heart. They really appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you for everything. I know it's been a really difficult year. I know we won't have as much as we've had in the past, but every last little bit is greatly appreciated. So
Thank you very much again. Thanks, Rich. Also, in regards to the Beads of Courage boxes, if anybody has been making some and you want to bring them in, we only have 7 as of this point, and I've contacted the nurse over there in Children's Hospital. She has not gotten back to me yet, but I told her to 7 are hers, but if we could get a little bit more, it would be kind of nice. So give me a shout or something if you do have some, or maybe even bring them in. I'd be glad to meet anybody here over the weekend, you know, a Saturday, if they want to drop some off or anything. So are there any other announcements?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just got a notice from Woodworking Shows. They're tentatively planning on doing it March 19th to the 21st of next year. So that might be something that we might want to consider. I don't know how it's going to happen or if they'll cancel it again or not.
You said March 19th to the 21st?
Yes.
It'll be his first on-camera appearance since late on election night, when he prematurely and incorrectly claimed victory despite millions of ballots still unaccounted for. It's not clear if we'll try to repeat that tonight. Less than
All right, Hallie, thank you. We want to get more now on those lawsuits filed.
Okay, we'll look into that. We'll find out, see if we can't get some answers for you. I guess really we're probably going to have to see once what happens, see how things go as far as the COVID. I mean, if it's bad, I mean, no one's going to want to go, but let's see once what time brings. It's a little too early to call it at this point. So anyone else? Okay, we got nothing here. I think what we'll do is let's bring Bill up from General Finishes. Okay, Bill, you're on.
Is my audio on? Can everybody hear me? Test, test. Can everybody hear me? Yes, no? Hello?
Can you hear Bill all right?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
All right.
I can hear you.
Thank you for tuning in tonight. Appreciate it, everybody.
The lawsuit today offered no specifics or proof.
We're gonna have some technical issues to work with, so make sure you find the mute button on your screen and press that so that we're not listening to everybody, and so everybody can hopefully hear what I'm saying. So thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll hopefully get you out of here before the Packers game. I was asked to talk about a couple of things, outdoor finishes being one topic. I also want to hit on, we've got a new product coming out, so I want to discuss that a little bit. Depending on what kind of time we have, we can talk a little bit about white paint, some of the challenges there when you're painting woodwork white. We can even play around with spraying a little bit. So I don't want to get too long-winded, but I did want to have plenty of material to cover. So if you have any questions as I'm going through anything, please feel free to jump in, because I'm going to bore myself if I'm just sitting here talking to a camera for the next 45 minutes or so. So the number one topic that Ron asked me to talk about today is outdoor finishes. And the short answer about outdoor finishes is that they're always going to be a maintenance coating. I know everybody wants to have a finish that they put on a hardwood surface, whether it's a front door, whether it's a picnic table, outdoor furniture, and you want to put it on and you don't want to have to worry about it for 20 years. And the reality is that's just not the case when it comes to woodworking. So I mean, that's not even the case with some of the new composite decking and concrete. Everything needs some sort of maintenance. Wood is going to be no different. Now, I have some pictures here that I want to start by showing everybody, and hopefully we can get these with the overhead camera, of a few kind of classic examples of some good and some bad and some ugly that I've seen over the years. And I think the number one question we get when we're talking about, you know what, should I just hold them up here for now? Number one question we get when we're talking about outdoor finishes is, how long are they going to last? And this picture is a really good example. This was taken out in the Pacific Northwest, out in the Seattle area. And you can tell that the surface on the, let's see here, on this side is all grayed out. And the surface on this side here, the wooden siding is beautiful and brown and looks brand new. that is all stained and was stained at the same time. And we don't know how long it was. It really doesn't matter. This grade outside over here is facing the south, and the new looking side was facing east, and it looked like it was installed yesterday. So there's not a really good, easy answer to tell you how long something is going to last. When we have people that are doing outdoor projects, we tell them, especially in the Wisconsin winters here, check it in the spring, check it in the fall, make sure there's no major defects. The better you treat it, keep it out of the wintertime conditions, the drier you keep it, the better off it's going to be. There's no magic bullet as far as trying to keep things looking good. This is a real beauty that we got a question on here earlier this year, and this was a brand new cedar picnic table. Customer did a really nice job on it and finished it in our outdoor oil. And as you can see, about half of it, maybe even a little bit more, is looking pretty beat up, and then the other half looks brand new. And again, this is a really good example of even the same piece of wood can weather differently. So again, you want to keep things looking nice. We're going to go through a few products that we do have that will give you as much durability as possible, but especially when you have a new wood surface outside, it's going to require maintenance potentially a couple of times in the first couple of months to keep it looking nice. And then again, this is a really good example of what can happen if that doesn't. So here's another one for everybody to take a look at. This is an exterior pole. This is a really high-end wood called a koya, and it's actually chemically treated. This wood has a 25-year underwater warranty. It is more expensive than composite decking, but it is an absolutely fantastic product to work with. It has great dimensional stability. And we have a customer that uses this for exterior light posts, and then uses our water-based clear on it. And you can tell in the picture that the water-based clear hasn't stood the test of time very well in this picture, but I'm going to put it as a side-by-side. This is the exact same pole, just the other side of it. So again, we're talking about the fact that the finish isn't necessarily the issue with the failing here. What we actually found on the pole that failed, it was right next to a road, and they were plowing snow in the wintertime in New York. And all of the snow and debris would get kicked up off the road and just beat the heck out of that pole. And as soon as you start chipping away a finish, it's going to start getting water underneath it, and it's going to fail from the inside out. So again, just some illustrations of it's not necessarily always the finish that's failing. There's a lot that goes into that. This is another picture, and you know what? If you can zoom in just a little bit more. What I want everybody to kind of take a look at here, and what you see just on the bottom and over on this side here, you can see some dark areas, and there's a little bit of an imperfection in the wood there that you see. And then on the bottom, just below there, were some actual screw holes, and they're right about where my fingers are, where the screw holes were. And there was a lot of water that was actually wicking up into that exposed surface. And what you see, those dark areas, is water that's getting underneath that film, and eventually that's going to become a problem. Now, this is a relatively new piece. When I took the picture of it, it was only out a couple of months, but you can guarantee as soon as that water underneath there freezes and expands, that finish is going to have a really hard time. So I've kind of given you the bad news all up front, but there is some good news there. Again, the best thing is to keep an eye and make sure to maintain it appropriately. We do have some products here and some different options for you as far as giving you the best chance at a good durable coating. So we don't make a oil-based exterior spar varnish. And spar varnish is really just another term for us. Obviously, it's a part of a boat, so it's meant to indicate that it's going to be a very durable exterior finish. We do make a water-based, and that's what this exterior 450 is. So compared to the outdoor oil is going to be an oil-based product. And the easiest comparison is outdoor oil would be similar to if you put lotion on your hands. So you know what, I'm actually going to grab a piece of wood here. I'm going to kind of show everybody what the application process is, because it's really not overly complicated here. All right. So outdoor oil, it's really made to be a penetrating wood oil. It is going to wear off over time, not too dissimilar from what you would expect out of a butcher block oil. Now you are going to get a beautiful natural oil look. So if you're working on figured wood, you're really going to bring out the depth and richness in that project that you're working on. But what this is made to do is you put it on there, you make sure to saturate the wood, and then you let it sit for a little bit so that it can kind of soak in and really penetrate in. Now, once you've given it, say 10 to 15 minutes, you don't want to let it just sit there and dry as it's puddled on there, okay? So once you've given it some time to soak in, we can already see how this is soaking in a little bit differently in different areas of this wood. You're going to take and you're going to wipe off the excess. So what I was saying about this being most similar to lotion for wood or lotion for your hands is you're going to put this on, it's going to soak in, it's going to give you some water protection, but it's really not building a thick film like a varnish would. This is made to soak in, give you some protection. It's made to wear off a little bit, and then you apply more. How often you apply it, again, that's going to depend on what kind of exposure. I would say at least a couple of times a year if you want to keep the surface looking nice. The beauty of this is because it's not a really thick film forming product, it's really going to be easy to maintain because you just reapply more and you move on. You don't have to worry about stripping that finish off. It's never going to flake or peel like what you would expect something that is a film forming finish to do. So it's going to soak in and give you some water protection, give you mold, mildew protection, all that fun stuff. But again, it is a maintenance coating. So this is really great if you're working on a surface where you have a lot of edges, a lot of spaces that might be open, like a picnic table, for example. There's no way to completely seal a picnic table if it has a lot of cracks, a lot of nooks, a lot of crannies, a lot of screw holes. Ultimately, what is going to happen in that case is you're going to get water that penetrates into some of those seams, gets into the wood from the inside out, and then it's going to cause failure. So in that kind of a case, something like again, the outdoor oil would be fantastic. I'm going to make our cameraman crazy here today by going back and forth. So hopefully we don't make it too dizzy at home there. So the other option, if you want something that's a bit more permanent and you know you can get a really good seal on that surface, is going to be our exterior 450. Does that work? That way you don't have to keep going back and forth. So our exterior 450 is going to be our water-based version of a spar varnish. And we have customers, the customer that we were talking about before with the lampposts, he has products that are out there for 7, 8, 9 years and still look like they're brand new. Because they're well taken care of and they're sealed off, and that wood we know isn't going to move too much. Now again, that doesn't mean that every project is going to last that long, obviously, but as far as application goes, the beauty of this is you can use a brush, you can spray it on if you want to. Foam brush is a fantastic choice. It's going to go on with kind of a milky white color. So this is what we would call water white. If you're not familiar with water-based finishes, it will go on with a little bit of milkiness and then it's going to dry clear. That's completely normal for the water-based finishes. So you're going to brush it on there, you're going to give it a nice coat, and then you're going to let it sit. All right. And you're going to do that about 3-4 times, 3 to 4 coats is going to give you some really good protection. Okay. Now, the important thing to remember, and the exterior 450 does a fantastic job with protecting from getting water into that film. It's going to really repel all that water off of that surface. Now, much like sunscreen, I'm going to make a comparison to sunscreen here because it really makes the most sense. When you're outside in the summertime, no matter what SPF you buy, if you buy SPF 75, they say to reapply it regularly. Because even though that's a really strong sunscreen, it still has a tendency to wear out because UV rays will wear out kind of the UV absorbers that are in whatever you're putting on your face. Same kind of concept with a spar varnish. So Obviously, if you're using something beautiful like cedar, you want it to keep that nice rich color. Just putting a clear coat on it, it will help to prevent that from graying out, but it's not going to completely prevent it. The color in that wood a lot of times is not the most stable when it's sitting out in direct sunlight, so it could have a tendency to silver out on you. So that's where, even if you're looking to keep the color the same, we make exterior 450 stain, and this is in stock here at Woodcraft, and you're going to be able to get all of the colors in this line always in stock. And the nice thing, it's available in quarts. We also make it in gallons. Now, this is not going to be like a deck stain. This is not designed to be a deck stain. This is not designed to be like a log siding or a wood siding stain necessarily. This is made for more furniture, front doors, where you're going to put this on and then you're going to apply a clear coat. The beauty of this is, even if you choose a color that is very similar to what your wood already is, you're going to put pigment in that is color stable and is not going to fade out over time. So it's going to help protect that more. So cedar, for example, we make a color that is called cedar. It's a great option to put on there. It's not going to change the color of the wood that much, but it's going to prevent it from graying out over time. All right. So really, really important to keep that in mind. Now, if you're okay with it graying out, that's fantastic. If you don't want something to gray out, kind of like if you don't want Purple Heart to change color, you go and put it in a dark room someplace and never bring it out again. So Mother Nature is undefeated, unfortunately. We do what we can to try and fight it. But again, keep an eye on your exterior projects. So welcome questions as I'm talking here. Please feel free to chime in, whether it's the chat might actually be the easiest. Would that be right, Jerry? You keep an eye on the chat over there? Okay. So if you have questions as we're going and you don't want to pop your microphone on, go ahead and write it in the chat, and that'd be a great way. Jerry will convey those as we go. So hopefully that gives you a little better concept of exterior finishes. Fiberglass doors. This is actually all done with a water-based finish. So I know a lot of people, their fiberglass doors wear out. They use maybe some sort of an inexpensive stain, and after a couple of years, it's all faded out. First of all, you're going to get what you pay for, especially in stain when you're talking about color stability. So if you go and buy the bargain brand at a big box store and put it on, in a couple of years, it's probably going to fade. That's the reason why our stuff is a little bit more expensive, is because we use really good ingredients in there, pigments being one of them. So exterior rated pigments are really good. Now this door here could be done in a day. So if you're used to doing fiberglass doors on your own and you're not familiar with water-based, this door can be stained and you can do 2 to 3 top coats in a day and be done with it. So especially our contractors really love using the water base on fiberglass, because a lot of times they're working in homes where they have a lot of people coming in and out. They can't afford to have a door stained one day and then come back 2 or 3 days in a row to put an oil-based top coat on it. They just don't have that kind of time. So a lot of advantages to the water-based finishes. It's not that they're less durable. They're just going to be a little bit different to work with. Now, I will tell you, if you're applying water-based finishes, if you're doing it out in the sun when it's 80 degrees, you're going to struggle. Water-based finishes are best used when it's about 70 degrees, when you're not working in direct sunlight. That doesn't mean that you go out in the evening when it's when your door has been in the sun all day and the door is heated up to 90 degrees, and all of a sudden it's cooling down during the evening hours. That surface can still be very warm. Same concept goes for if it's a little cool. So we often get phone calls at this time of year from people in Wisconsin. Weather is a perfect example right now, where they want to go and do an exterior spar varnish right now because it's 70 degrees. Well, it takes time for that finish to fully dry and fully harden. And we know with Wisconsin weather that cold weather is around the corner, probably in a few days. And when that cold weather sets in, that's really going to slow down how fast that product cures. So make sure that you're applying as close to possible, around 70 degrees, out of direct sunlight, and make sure that the weather is going to be in your favor for at least a few days while it gets a little bit cured, and certainly not getting into freezing temperatures over the couple of weeks after that. So Do exterior when you're supposed to do it during the summertime, and try and not to plan a date specifically on the calendar. You do have to be a little bit flexible for what Mother Nature throws at you. So,
I have a question.
yes.
Question is there a general finish product that does work well on decks?
We don't get into decks. So the question is about decks, and if we do deck stains, deck finishes. You don't want to use something like the exterior 450 clear on a deck. Horizontal surfaces especially, and you can see by those few pictures I showed you, they're going to get beat to heck. There's no way around it. That's where the sun is most directly impacting that surface, whether it's a picnic table, whether it's a deck. Do we have people that use our exterior stain on decks? Yes. Is it designed for that? No, because it doesn't necessarily have enough of some of that water repelling nature to it like some of the other products do that are out there. So, but even a deck, I mean, same concept with a deck. You read the instructions on those products and they say to redo the stain regularly. So unfortunately there's no magic bullet, but no, we do not have deck products is the short answer. So more your front doors, your furniture, that sort of thing. Okay. Keep the questions coming. I'm going to keep the line moving here as far as topics go. We'll snap back to exterior if we need to, but one of the other things that Ron wanted me to talk about today is any new products that we have coming out. So some of you might be familiar with our EnduroVar. This is our water-based oil modified top coat. So this is made to give you the look of an oil-based finish with the soap and water cleanup of a water-based top coat. Dries very quickly, dries very hard, gives a great durable finish. Really, really nice product. And to give you an idea of what this looks like, brought in a piece of walnut here. And what you're gonna see is on the top here, we have our water-based clear high performance. So that walnut, you can see the stripe in the middle here has no finish on it. So the high performance really doesn't give it too much color. It's kind of a cold look. At the bottom here is our EnduroVar. So compared to the high performance, you can get the sense that there's just a little bit of warmth and color there, which is really nice. Again, soap and water cleanup, not quite how an oil looks though. All right, so this is our Armor Seal on the bottom here. On the top, we did Armor Seal and then actually coated it with our water-based high performance when that was all dry. So yes, you can layer oil and water as long as they're dry in between. You can go with Armor Seal first and then high performance. It certainly will work. All right, biggest thing, make sure it's dry in between. But again, so we've got the water-based oil modified, and then we have an oil-based, and there is a pretty distinct difference between the two. This product has been out for, it's been out for a long time, and it's a very unique resin. The resin companies work very hard to make that oil modified water soluble. When resins are out for a really long time, what happens is people eventually move away from them, and that's what has happened with EnduroVar. So we still do have that product being sold, but in the next, call it 3 or 4 months or so, you're probably going to see that replaced with EnduroVar 2. We're not very creative with the name, obviously, but we're trying to not confuse everybody too much. So we're calling it EnduroVar 2, so obviously you know it's a different product, but it is still going to serve the same purpose of water-based, but still giving you that oil-based color. Now what I brought here is a board that we did, and one side of this is Armor Seal, the other side is the new EnduroVar. So, trying to figure out which way to move here. There we go. So you can see on the back, you have that raw walnut, and you see the color that they both bring out, the Armor Seal and the EnduroVar. And you're going to ask me which side is which, and I'm going to tell you I do not know because they really, really look similar. And whoever did this didn't write on the back and kind of hamstrung me on that one. So again, this is a huge improvement versus what we have right now. Instead of trying to hold too many things here. Again, what we have right now where you see a pretty distinct difference between the two products, like you see on that other board, it's going to be a lot different when we get that new product out. It's going to be a lot more friendly as well. Our EnduroVar currently can be a little bit finicky, we'll call it. It's a really nice product, but sometimes it doesn't like to play well with other products. The new EnduroVar, you're going to be able to put it over existing finishes. We've had some really great success with doing tests and samples on that. It's going to work with all of our products in our line, not just our water-based. So if you wanted to use an oil-based stain and EnduroVar 2, that's certainly going to be an option. So if you're trying to make the transition to water, but you still want that look of oil, keep an eye out for EnduroVar 2. That's going to be a really great addition to the line. And yeah, it should be next 3, 4, maybe 5 months, depending on how fast we're able to work through the inventory that we have. So we're really excited about having that added to our line. All right. You know what? Let's play around with spraying just a little bit, because I think that's going to be a little bit more interesting than the white paint conversation. We can always dig into that though. But I don't know how many of you do spray finishes out there. If you use aerosols, that's certainly fine. But if you're looking to do a lot of finishing, or if you're doing large projects pretty often and you're trying to save some time, get a little better finish, and right now you're using a brush roller or anything like that, it really is good to look at spraying if you fall into that category. And spraying is really a lot of fun as well. It's not too complicated. There's always a bit of a learning curve whenever you're learning something new, but what I've got here, and I'm not going to turn this on until everybody's ready, because it gets a little bit loud, but what we have here is the Earl X 5500, and obviously this one's been a little used. It's a little bit dirty, but this unit right here is all self-contained. It's basically a vacuum motor that instead of sucking air in, it's blowing air out, right? And the air is coming out of here. We've got the gun that's relatively basic. You have just a couple of adjustments. So we've got this adjustment right here in the back, which is how much fluid is coming out. And then on the front, we can turn this the air cap into 3 different directions. So right now it's going to spray vertically. What that allows me to do is spray side to side. If I go diagonal, it's going to spray in a little round pattern. So if you're doing chair spindles, something like that, that would be really good. Then you can also spray with a horizontal pattern, meaning you would move the gun up and down when you're doing that. So pretty basic as far as this goes. Really, really handy to be able to use if you're doing projects with a lot of surfaces. This is going to make life a lot faster. So all self-contained. Now what I'm going to show you on here, this has been milk painted with a gray color, and hopefully we can pick up some of this finish that's going down. I'm going to show you a couple of ways to not do this, and kind of what we're looking for to get the right finish in the end. So first of all, what I'm going to show you is those different settings on here and what kind of a fan pattern you're going to get. So now we're spraying this way. All right, so again, we've got these 3 different fan patterns here, and like we were talking about before, we're going to get that little bit of milky haziness going, and that's perfectly normal when you're using a water-based finish. You want that little bit of bluish haze. Now, we're looking for a magic number when we're spraying of about 3 to 5 wet mils, so 3 to 5 thousandths of an inch, and you figure a human hair is about a thousandth of an inch. So the question is, how are you going to know if you're not spraying enough or if you're spraying too much? Well, this kind of look is what we're looking for. This product will not sag until you get to about 7 wet mils. So you do have a pretty good window there to be able to spray in. Now making sure that this is set properly is key. I actually have a 1.0 tip in this right now, and I've got that needle pretty far open. You can also use the 1.5 and be successful. The different tip sizes, different needle sizes in here make this a really nice and expensive gun for, like I say, about 350 bucks or so. So you want to make sure that you're using the right tip size. For clears, the 1 or the 1.5 is fine, and then you're going to adjust to make sure the amount of fluid coming out is going to match how quickly you're moving. So there's no right or wrong answer, and I know customers that are new to spraying, they want to know exactly how many quarter turns to open up the needle, and how far away to hold it, and how quick to move. The answer is all of that works together to give you a good spray. So you want to hold it roughly about this far away, no further than that, somewhere in between about your index finger and the tip of your thumb as far as distance away if you had your finger spread out like this, okay? The thing you want to avoid is sitting in one place and kind of fanning like this, because then you're not going to be putting down an even film. So what you want to do is always spray perpendicular to the surface, straight at it, and you want to move your entire arm and the entire gun back and forth, trying to keep that about the same distance away the whole time. Beyond that, I'm going to show a couple of, the first example I'm going to show is not putting enough product on and what that looks like. Customers that are used to spraying lacquers are really susceptible to not putting enough product on. Water-based finishes build layer upon layer upon layer. They don't melt into each other. So with a lacquer, you can spray on just a tiny little amount and it's going to melt into that surface below, essentially giving you one thick film. This is going to be more like stacking blankets, where you're not going to have that ability. So if you don't put enough down, it's not going to flow and level and give you a smooth surface. It's going to kind of be rough textured, which is obviously not what we want. So that's what I'm going to show you first here. All right, so hopefully you can see a little bit of glare there, but there's really not too much there to see. Okay, you can see a little bit of wetness on that side, but there's really no color to it. There's not that bluish haze that we need, and there's barely any material on there. So again, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for this kind of color going on in there. So this gun has fought me a little bit today, but I hope that we can get it dialed in. You don't want to have to go back and forth, say 10 times to get enough fluid down. Because if you're doing that, it's drying as it's coming out of the gun because you're blowing air out of this gun, and you're not going to be putting down that wet film. You're going to be kind of dry spraying the entire time. So again, you have to find that magic area where maybe 2-3 passes back and forth is all you want, and then you need to be moving on to the next surface. We're going to try and overlap about 50% each time. That way, each square inch on here should be getting 2 passes back and forth. If you try and go just edge to edge, you're going to end up with striping where you have light areas and heavy areas, and that's not what you want either. So we're going to give this a shot. I'm going to show you what it looks like when we actually do the right surface, the right amount of product down here, and kind of that color we're looking for, that bluish haze. All right. Now you can start to see that little bit of blue coming through, hopefully on the camera. First of all, you see this all has a nice wet edge to it, nice wet film. I'm actually going to bring this in just a little closer to make it a little bit easier on you. But you can see how smooth that looks in the glare, and that's what we're looking for, okay? There's just a tiny bit of texture to it. It's flowing and leveling and getting smooth as it sits there wet. And then the other thing to consider is when this dries, it's going to dry to about 25% of what you see when it's wet. That's about the amount of solids that are in this product. So every 4 mils that you see when it's wet, every 4,000ths of an inch that you put down wet, it's going to dry to about 1,000. So that means all of those imperfections are going to shrink by that much as well. They're really going to disappear. So you want to get a nice film down, but you don't necessarily need to be a perfectionist about it. There is some wiggle room there, and having the gun set right is part of that. So I'm going to keep on spraying a little bit on one edge and try and get too much product on there so you can kind of see what that looks like here. you can hopefully see there. We'll try and go a little bit more direct for you. That's starting to look pretty white and milky there, which is not what we're looking for. Okay, we want just a little bit of that milkiness, but we don't want it to be completely white like that. And I mean, even that's holding up. It's not running all over the place, but that's not what we want. We want it to be more in this range here. If it goes on a little bit thick like that, will it dry? Will it be okay? Probably. But if conditions aren't perfect, if it's a little chilly, if you're working on a surface that's a little bit cold, you can run into some issues with it not drying and leaving some haze behind. So one of the beauties of the changes in environment here in Wisconsin, we have to deal with heat, we have to deal with cold, and we have to adapt. So whether that's solvent or water-based, you do have to keep the conditions in mind. All right. Please, again, feel free to ask questions if you have any. Jerry? Yep.
I have two questions.
Yep.
All right. The paint layer, you said that the paint layer needs time to dry.
Mm-hmm.
You also said that an oil-based product can be top coated with Durowar.
Yes.
How long does the oil product need to cure?
So if you're going with a oil-based stain or armor seal and then a water-based top coat over it, the oil, our rule of thumb, and this is a really safe rule of thumb, is normally 72 hours if you're talking about a 24-hour dry stain, which our oil-based is. Now that is all relative. If you are working in a cool environment, it's going to slow down the dry time. If you're working in a basement without a lot of air movement, again, going to slow down the dry time, which is why we say 72 hours as a rule of thumb. If that stain is dry after 24 hours, could you go over it with the water-based? Yes, absolutely. And then honestly, that's what we did with this walnut piece here. And this armor seal was dry for about 16 hours when I put high performance on it. And it's absolutely beautiful. Now I made sure the conditions were good as far as the armor seal drying, and I made sure to kind of sand the armor seal a little bit and made sure it wasn't sticky before putting the water-based top coat on it. So yes, you certainly can layer water-based over oil-based stain, no problem there. Or we're advocates of considering water-based stain as the other option. So I mean, without going too far down the rabbit hole, if you haven't used the water-based stains yet, there are some distinct advantages to them. I've got a couple of samples here that I'll show you to kind of get the point across.
So you're doing, what is the device that you're spraying against?
The device I'm spraying against, yeah, I feel like we could patent those and sell them. That question we get at every demo. That is a homemade unit that has a box fan with a furnace filter in the front of it, and then just grates like you would find for ceiling lights in the front there. So that actually folds up into a nice little box, and it makes it really easy to transport. So when I'm doing demos like this, I can just do this, and it folds right up, and I can take it home. So if you need something like this to spray with, the beauty again with water-based finishes, you're not going to blow yourself up spraying it at an electric fan. So I'm not going to recommend this for every situation, but for what we do and in an enclosed environment like this, gents, you could speak to it more than I can. Is there any overspray in here at all? I mean, doesn't smell. We do this in shows as well when we're at trade shows, and nobody even knows what we're doing right next to you. So.
And you would have been the fan on it.
No, I don't have the fan on. Is a really good point. So usually I do, and it keeps it down even more. Yeah. So that's but I mean, part of that is as well making sure that sprayer is set right. So yeah, that's good question, and hopefully that answers it for you. Even just the cheap version of if I'm traveling on a plane and I don't want to haul that thing with, I'll grab a box fan for $20 and a furnace filter for 3 or 4 and tape them together and spray in front of it. So simple solutions are good, but I mean, as far as going water and oil, I know grain raise is one thing that people bring up, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's not a reality. I would tell you that this is a raw red oak door. The bottom was finished in our wiping oil-based stain in the red can. Top was finished in our gel stain. And then the middle was finished in our water-based stain. Okay. What you're going to notice the biggest difference between water and oil, with an oil-based stain, you really get a lot of this grain stripe. And the reason you get a lot more contrast with an oil-based stain is because it doesn't take as much, it doesn't soak into the wood as much. So you're going to get a lot more difference because that open grain it actually goes into, it has a chance to, but the closed grain areas, there's really nowhere for that oil to go. So it really struggles to penetrate into the wood. If you've ever stained hard maple, trying to get it with a dark color, you know exactly what I mean. You can't get there. Top, again, you're going to see something very similar with the oil-based gel stain. What you notice in the middle with the water-based stain, you don't have as much of that green strike. There's still some of it, but it is less pronounced. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether that is good or bad. That is a matter of personal preference. But the reason you have less of that contrast is because water wants to soak into wood. So in those closed grain areas, you're going to get a lot more absorption than you would get with an oil-based stain. Where does that mean you have an advantage? If you're working on a really hard to stain wood like hard maple, and you need a dark color, water-based stain is going to be the way to go. So here's a water-based stain. Now this is a relatively soft wood. We're talking about aspen here, but compare it to oil-based, and yeah, I'm going to say this is Minwax. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. So you notice a pretty distinct difference between those two colors. This is espresso, or this is Minwax espresso, coffee bean, whatever color they call it that matches up with coffee. And this is our espresso on the bottom. So pretty distinct difference, not only in the uniformity of the color, but you can tell the quality of the color as well. There's a night and day difference between the two. So, and for those of you that might say, well, it's just the piece of wood that you were working on. Again, this was all the same piece of wood cut in half. And we're looking at same kind of idea. This is going to be the Minwax espresso, and this is our water-based espresso. So if I can get the glare down, there's a pretty distinct difference between the evenness of the stain. And then over on this side, we've got another competitor that looks a little bit better, but still not quite as even as what our water-based shows. Okay. Just to get that point across with one more sample then, as I try not to make too big of a mess over here. So obviously you all know that you can stop into Woodcraft here and they've got all of the colors up on the boards for all of our stains. I'm going to try and find our black water-based stain here, and I'm going to compare this to the black in the gel stain. I think that's a really good illustration of, they're both the blackest color that we can get. And you can see how much darker that water-based stain is, okay? So again, if you're looking for that dark color, that's where the water-based stain is going to come in.
There's one coat?
One coat. So if you're struggling trying to get dark colors, especially on hardwoods like maple, and you're having to put on 2-3 coats, having to tone, having to do all kinds of different things, definitely time to consider water-based. And we kind of started talking a little bit about grain rays, and I'm again not going to sugarcoat it. You do get a little bit of it with the water-based stain, not nearly as bad as what it used to be, but it does exist. Now, this door that I was talking about here, this has oil, and water on for stains, right? This entire thing was top coated with water-based top coat. It has 3 coats of water-based top coat on it. Now, fighting grain rays, what a lot of people will do, and again, if you're used to working with solvent-based, the idea is as soon as you feel that it's rough, you kind of try and smooth it out. The challenge is if you do that, sometimes you don't have enough finish built up to actually get it smooth. So you're re-exposing the wood, putting a little bit more water base on it, kind of putting more water into the wood, swelling again. It's kind of a vicious cycle. So you want to get enough finish on there. I like putting a couple coats of finish on there, doing it within that couple-hour recoat window. 2 hours is generally the recoat window for water-based stains. So in that, say, 2 to 4 hour window, I'll put another coat on there, and I'm not even going to worry about sanding it because that film is still so porous, it's going to adhere, it's going to be just fine. After that second coat dries, then you can lightly sand it smooth, and you're not going to get through all of that finish. There's enough built up where you're going to still have a sealed surface. It's going to be smooth. You can finish it off with a third coat and be done. So instead of trying to fight grain raise, bury it in the clear coat, you're still going to get a smooth surface. And I mean, this piece of red oak right here, there is zero difference between the oil-based and the water-based stains. It all feels exactly the same. So,
Can you mix the oil-based stain and gel stain?
yes, you could mix the oil-based stain and gel stain. That's a really good segue, actually. It's anytime you mix products at point of use, you're probably going to be fine, but over the long term, storage-wise, you never really know what's going to happen. So could you mix those together? Yes, they're both mineral spirits based. Nothing too crazy is going to happen, but I generally wouldn't recommend it. But we do a lot of things as woodworkers we wouldn't recommend, and that's part of the fun of it. So to that point about mixing products, this board was white, all white at one point. And if I can get the glare down a little bit here, I'll hopefully show you what it looks like now. There we go. Okay. So this is all painted with our Snow White milk paint. We can get into whites and why we don't top coat whites, but you're going to see over on the side here, it's got just a little bit of a yellow hue to it. Several reasons that can happen. But before we go into that, I want to talk about the pink side here. The pink side here was actually a mix of 50% milk paint, Snow White, and 50% high performance. Now, you're mixing a clear and a water-based clear and white paint. Nothing bad could happen, right? This was white for about 8 months. And took it out of the cabinet one day to look at it, and it turned pink. And I think the camera shows it pretty well, but it's a pretty significant pink color. And it turned just like that overnight. And what happened was the resins that were in those products basically reacted with each other. Because it was dry, it took a really long time for that reaction to occur. You put these two products together wet, and it's going to happen very, very quickly. So the reason I'm saying that is you do have to be somewhat aware of when you're mixing products, you can sometimes end up with some unintended consequences. This is one really good example of it. A little bit extreme, but it gets the point across. So can you mix stains and clear coats? Absolutely, yes, because you're not going to be anywhere near as concerned when you're talking about a dark stain, for example, like this in a clear coat. It's not going to turn a crazy pink like that. But especially if you're talking about painted surfaces, please keep that in mind that some crazy things can happen, and it's always good to try and follow directions as much as possible. So we have just what do you want me to do? Wrap it up? We have a couple more minutes. What are we? Keep going? Okay. Then I'll spend the last few minutes before the Packers are. I don't want to get in the way of the Packer game too much, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about white paint and woodworking, because it is a huge trend, and there's no avoiding it. So we do have two fantastic products here as far as painting woodwork white that I'm going to highly recommend. First of all, priming. There are a lot of primers out there. You can go and buy a primer for 20, 25 bucks a gallon, and I can guarantee you every primer, oil-based, water-based, shellac-based, every primer says that it has stain blocking capabilities. What they don't tell you is how far that stain blocking goes. So I was talking to a primer manufacturer, and they make a crazy amount of primers. If you ever walk down any kind of a paint aisle, it's insane how many they offer, right? And I said, you have these multiple water-based paint or water-based primers. They all say stain blocking on them. Which one should I be using for a water stain that came through on my ceiling? He said, you know what? They all say stain blocker, but you have to use the most expensive one, or else it's going to keep coming back. Now, nowhere on the label does it say that. It just says stain blocking on the label. So as a consumer, how are you supposed to know what to do? We're going to hopefully simplify that here. First of all, shellac base. Shellac is going to be a great stain blocker 99% of the time. It's a organic substance, so it's nice that you know that it's renewable. However, it is alcohol based, so when you're spraying it, it's going to smell. If that is not what you want, then you need to look in the direction of a water based. Now, potentially you could be working on something like maple and use a really cheap primer and get away with it and be okay. If I'm going through all the work of painting something white, I don't want to chance that it's going to turn yellow or show wood through in 6 or 8 months. And that's what happened with a family member of mine. They built a house, brand new, used all very good maple for the trim, painted it all white. 8 to 10 months later, you had mineral streaks coming through in spots. And that was because they didn't prime properly. And yes, it took that long because these surfaces, you can't think of it like a piece of plastic that nothing gets through. You have to think of these as they do breathe, and they still do allow moisture and whatever's in the wood to kind of permeate through those layers. So it might take time, it might look good right away, but that's where something like stain blocker comes in. So again, I'm not going to tell you this is the cheapest product out there. It is not. But if you want a water-based primer that's not going to smell up the house, or you're not going to have to worry about blowing up if you're spraying or stinking everybody out, this is going to be the product for you. And to illustrate that, this piece right here, this brown dye stain you see, this entire surface was brown dye stained, okay? And we were able to spraying do 1 coat of primer and 1 coat of paint on here. And there is not a drop of bleed through. Now, we generally recommend 2 coats of not generally, we always recommend 2 coats of stain blocker. The reason being, if you miss a little bit when you're putting on the first coat, it's going to bleed through. So you need that second coat for kind of an insurance coat. Sometimes it could take 3 coats, depends on how you're applying it. But you need that good complete seal. If you're spraying, you get that a lot easier. Again, we have this beautiful bright white surface, okay? Now I'm hoping that this shows up on the camera. We've got this bright white, and then on the underside there, this is the same white color. And I don't know if you can see that it has just a little bit of a yellowish tinge to it on there. But this was done with a primer that's not a stain blocker. So the bottom board was done with our stock white undercoat. Now, if you didn't have these sitting next to each other, if I was just holding this board, you would still say it's bright white. I mean, it's not like it looks yellow, but compared to something that has a really good primer underneath it, that is meant to keep things white, there's a pretty distinct difference. So again, if you want something bright white, use stain blocking primer. And then we have this wonderful cabinet paint called brushable white enamel. We make it in 3 sheens: satin, flat, semi-gloss. The beautiful thing about this is you don't need a top coat. All right, it is more durable than our milk paint. And it's made to be that way so you don't have to top coat it, so it's not going to scratch or anything like that. The milk paint is made for a specific purpose so that you can do some distressing. Milk paint is exterior rated as well, but you can kind of sand through it and get that antique look. The brushable white enamel is not made for that. It's made to be a cabinet paint. You put it on and it's made to stay durable and give you that good hard finish that you need. So the industry standard is going to be that you don't want to clear coat over white, because this is what can happen. I think this shows up a little bit better than that other board. But again, the middle doesn't have a top coat on it. The top does have a top coat on it. And you get just that little bit of color change going on there, okay?
Question.
Yep.
What's your recommendation for white kitchen cabinets that were previously painted with white latex?
So latex is a word that gets used a lot, and it's hard to know. A lot of times when customers say something was painted with latex, it means it was the cheap stuff that was in the basement that they had left over and they just wanted to use it. Latex paint generally isn't made, a wall paint is not made to be a cabinet, right? So if you're looking to paint over it and that surface is in good shape, I would tell you just to clean it, scuff it, and then you can go over it with the brushable white enamel. If you need to prime it, then obviously the stain blocker would come into play. So that's also the case if you have your golden oak doors that you're trying to paint white. Again, you don't have to strip this down to bare wood. You clean them off. We like denatured alcohol and water for a cleaner. That way there's not going to be any residue behind. It's really simple, and it's all going to evaporate off. We will clean that with a maroon Scotch-Brite pad. So that way, when you're cleaning it with that denatured alcohol solution, you're actually cutting the grease and grime off, instead of if you just try and wipe it with a rag, You know, when you try and wipe grease off of something with a rag, you end up smearing a lot of it. We really don't want that. We need to cut that off. So that's where the Scotch-Brite pads come in. And then you can go with the primer and the paint right over the top. So the question will always become whether it's latex paint, whether it's a stain, whatever it is that finish underneath in good shape? And that's why it's good to clean it. We like to scuff it with these 220 flexible sanding pads. Sandpaper is fine for sanding surfaces, but the challenge comes in when you get into a curved edge like this, and you try and use sandpaper in there, you're going to cut through some of the high areas, and it's just really challenging. Whereas these flex, and you can get right in there and meet that contour with the sandpaper. Okay, so clean it, scuff it, paint right over it. Now, if you're sanding and it's latex and you're getting it kind of balling up and gunking up, it's probably not a good sign. And at that point, you want to try and reevaluate exactly what you want to do. You might have to strip that off to really get where you want to go. So a little bit of a case-by-case basis, but if the finish is in good shape, then you can go right over the top of it. No big deal.
That white enamel, does that only come in white?
The white enamel, the stock color is only white, yes. Now, with that said, our factory is literally a half an hour down the road, down I-43. We're in East Troy. So if you were doing a kitchen and you wanted to match a Benjamin Moore, Sherwin-Williams, Behr, any color you can think of, you can talk to Chris here and he can special order you and we will make a custom color for you. We have a full paint lab in our factory where we can make any custom color. So we can even do that with milk paint. Now, that's going to be a gallon size only, or we can do pails as well, 5-gallon pails, but we're not going to do quarts or pints for that. But that is certainly doable. And if you're doing a kitchen and your wife is very particular about a color, you definitely want to make sure you get it right. So we will be happy to do that, absolutely. Just because this is brushable doesn't mean it doesn't spray. It sprays beautifully. And if you were doing a kitchen, I would highly recommend considering spraying. Now, the Erlex is going to be maybe you don't want to spend the $350, $400, whatever it is on that Erlex unit. That's fine. You can even get for a kitchen project, you can get a $100 sprayer. And I believe even sells one that's similar here. That's going to be a lower price range. And that $100 or $150 that you're going to spend, and you can pull all of the doors and drawer fronts off. You can lay those down. You can spray them all. That is going to be worth your time alone for that project, even if you never use that sprayer again. So, and for those of you that say brushing is therapeutic, it's because you don't spray. That is absolutely true. All right. I went through this with my sister who was doing a chest of drawers and she wanted some help. So I came over there with the sprayer and she goes, no, I don't want the sprayer. And we had 10 drawers and 2 5-foot-tall chests, sprayed 2 coats of paint within 2.5 hours. And we got done with that and she goes, oh my God, I'm never using a brush again. Exactly. So yeah, if you're doing any kind of a large project like a kitchen, you need to consider spraying. If you're a little nervous about it, you need to get over your nerves. It's going to save you a lot of aggravation and you're going to get a lot better finish for it. And you can brush and roll the face frames and still get a really good result. But for anything that can be removed and maybe taken out into the garage or taken outside, good thing to consider. All right. Any other questions that we have there? Everybody's leaving for the Packer game already? Well, I appreciate everybody sticking around today. I don't know if you have more to say, Ron.
Yeah, I got one more question. You and I talked about this earlier. A couple of years ago, I made some of those outdoor tables and I used the cedar. And I went to seal them with, unfortunately, a cheap sealer.
Okay.
And they silver grayed on me.
Yep.
So I came in and I got the Millstone.
The milk paint.
Or milk paint.
Yep, that's the color of our milk paint.
Sanded it down a little bit, put that on, and then I went over with the exterior.
Okay.
And now, this is the first year I put them out being painted, and they chipped and broke up, and I know it's because of that
Yeah.
sealant I used first time around.
So in case you didn't hear, we were talking about, he was using an inexpensive sealer, an exterior spar varnish, put it on there, flaked and peeled off in a lot of spots. Kind of tried to scuff it and clean it a little bit, put the milk paint on over the top, and there's a lot of finish failure going on. And it goes back to a couple of things. Number one, if you have a poor finish underneath that it's trying to stick to, it's going to continue to fail, and that's really tough. On a picnic table like that, it's you need to make sure to kind of sand it, give it a lot of tooth so that paint has something to stick to. When it comes to trying to get a smooth finish, I think too many people will sand to say 400, 600, and they think that that's going to give them a smoother finish in the end. Whereas what you really need to do is sand it maybe to 180. If it's something rough or outside, sand it to 120 and be done with it, so that there's more wood, more surface for that paint to grab onto and give you more durability. So, yeah, yep, go ahead.
Is there a blocker now? If I go and I sand everything off and strip it back out, is there the blocker that I can put on and then start all over again, like with that one that you had, that exterior?
With the exterior 450?
No, with the black, was it the black one there, the wood stain?
Oh, the stain?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could stain it if you wanted
Yeah.
to strip it all off and go from there. It certainly is an option. I mean, when you bring it down to bare wood, down to the starting point, then the world is your oyster at that point.
Okay.
So, it certainly can be undone, but it's tough when exterior finishes fail, just because there's so many factors that can go into it. So, we try and do the best we can and put a good product out. I mean, the milk paint, one of our guys that you're probably familiar with, Tom, who's on a lot of our videos.
Yeah.
He's got the milk paint on some Adirondack chairs outside, and they are wearing like iron. I mean, they're absolutely fantastic. He didn't put a top coat on them, just left the milk paint on them, and they're holding up really, really well. Now he brings them in the winter time and makes sure that they're somewhat taken care of. But even if he leaves one sitting out in the rain, something like that, it's not a problem, because that milk paint does allow it to breathe a little bit, and he didn't over prep the surface. So, unfortunately, the only time you know when something's going to fail is when it's already
fails.
right. So we do the best that we can as users to give you to make sure you have a good surface to work on, and make sure it's clean, make sure it's stuffed, and make sure that it has time to cure out in the proper conditions, so that when it is going to get beat up by the elements, it's good to go.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions out there?
Do you recommend top coating milk paint?
Do we recommend top coating milk paint? That's a good question. It's a little bit of a loaded question. For a low to medium wear surface, you don't need to.
Okay.
So for an exterior piece of furniture, is it necessary? Not if it's not unless it's going to be really highly used. Now, if you're talking interior surface like a piece of furniture, kitchen cabinets that you were doing milk paint with, yeah, we would recommend top coating it then for more durability. Absolutely. With the caveat of white, you want to go more into the brushable white.
Okay. Any other questions?
Jerry's got one.
Oh, it's just, they're thanking you for the presentation.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh,
Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Like I say, I know your time is valuable, and hopefully you learned a little bit something today. And anytime you have questions, obviously the gentlemen here at Woodcraft do a fantastic job. We're happy to have them as partners, and I'm sure I'll be back before too long doing more demos. So have a great night, everybody.
Another question.
Yep.
I do a lot of scroll wall work.
Mm-hmm.
Scroll saw work.
Scroll saw work.
Yes. Is there a product that will not run or drip?
A product that won't run or drip on scroll saw work. Boy,
All those holes.
that's tough. That's really tough. Yeah, all those little surfaces are really tough. I mean, what I would do for something like scroll work is probably go with a wiping varnish like the Armor Seal or the Seal-A-Cell, something that really doesn't, that's made to go on in a thin film. You can get in there with a brush or something and put it on without it being too heavy. I mean, I wish there was an easy way to maybe dip some of that stuff and do it that way, but there's just not. So Probably doing a brush application with the Armor Seal would be the best way, and then feather it out with a nice natural bristle brush to try and keep the edges clean.
Couple more things.
All right. Appreciate it, everybody. Thank you very much. Any last words, Ron?
Yeah, before you go.
Yes.
We would like you to pick some names.
Oh, yes, we have winners.
Yeah, we need 2 winners.
We need 2 winners. All right. Okay. Ron P.
Ron P.
Ron Peterson.
Okay, that's Peterson.
Yeah, Ron Peterson.
All right, second lucky winner. $25 gift certificates, right?
Yes.
All right. Alex Leffelman.
There you go. Oh.
Dynamic duo.
Alex, are you still on? Is he there?
I don't know.
All right, Alex and Ron are our big winners tonight. So
There you
thank you
go.
very much for tuning in.
Thank you, everybody. If there's no other questions, I guess we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.
Go Pack.
Oh, there.
Oh,
There you go.
thank you.
Absolutely.
It's,